You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC 315, Muhammad versus Maddalena, or Della Maddalena, preview, predictions, and breakdown. UFC 315 takes place from the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, this Saturday night with a main event for the undisputed UFC welterweight championship of the world. Bilal, remember the name Muhammad, trying to make his first successful title defense after dominating Leon Edwards to a 5-round decision, going up against a man who lost his first 2 professional fights in mixed martial arts and went on a 17-fight unbeaten streak to try to claim UFC gold. And then in the co-main event of the evening, you have a battle for the UFC Women's Flyweight Championship of the world with the champion in Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko, who reclaimed her throne against Alexa Grasso at Noche UFC, defending against another standout striker in her claim for gold, I guess you could say. Her road to the title, probably her one and only shot at UFC gold in Manon Fiorot. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. Alright guys, we're back for UFC predictions on the channel. Let's get the views up on this one, why don't we? But yeah, I mean, we could talk a little bit about last week. We went 8 out of 12 on predictions. Called the TKO for Corey Sandhagen in the main event, and also called your boy RDR, Reinier de Ridder, over Bo Nickel. I expected a submission, but I told ya Nickel wasn't going to be able to easily outstrike Reinier de Ridder. I told ya that Bo Nickel was going to have an ego and try to grapple with Reinier de Ridder. I told ya that it wasn't going to work out very well. And did I pick decision? I think I did. I could be wrong. But your boy got it done. He broke him down, beat him up to the body, and finished him off. Reinier de Ridder is a true contender in the middleweight division. We called the TKO for... actually, I don't know. I don't know if I called the finish for Jillian Robertson. I bet KO submission, but I don't know if I called it. I think I called decision on the podcast. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we went 8-4. Our underdog of the week was Daniel Marcos. It didn't go our way. Lately, our underdogs of the weeks that I've been posting in the community tab haven't been going our way. But maybe we'll do it different this week, and maybe I'll just call my underdog of the week in this video in particular. But we'll see how it goes. Let's kick it off. Let's get it started. I like this card. I think this is a good card, and might as well not waste any more time. Let's continue our momentum, and let's go back-to-back with good cards. First fight up in the featherweight division, you got Daniel Willie Cat Santos taking on Jung Young Lee. Young Lee is coming in as the underdog, 11-2, 12-2 on the side of Santos. Santos was supposed to take on Davey Grant in his last fight, and he had to pull out due to an injury. I think it was more a weight-cutting issue than an injury, but you know, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, we know what to expect here. You know, I think the better wrestler in this fight is Jung Young Lee. I think he could probably get good takedowns, inside or outside trips, and control Daniel Santos from the top. I think Santos has good jiu-jitsu, but I don't necessarily think Santos is a good grappler from the top side. He's not really going to get a bunch of takedowns. He's not the greatest at getting in on the hips and getting the takedowns in general. And I think on the feet, I would give the technical advantage to Santos. I think he's good at walking forward. He does take a lot of shots, but he comes back, gets in your face, and kind of pushes you back and roughs you up. And I can make a comparison to the Haider Emil and Jung Young Lee fight. Even though that fight ended in the first round and Emil just rushed forward, got in his face, and put him out, you could tell in that fight that the adversity and fighting off of the back foot and getting pushed back immediately, that Jung Young Lee was not comfortable. And I kind of think that Santos has a style where it's not going to be right away, but in the second and the third round, I think he can push forward, kind of weather an early storm from Jung Young Lee and start to push him up against the fence, start to rip those shots to the body, start to work inside the clinch in the dirty boxing range, elbow over the top, uppercuts up the middle, knees to the body, elbows off the break, And I kind of think that's what we're going to see. I think for the first round, round and a half, Jung Yong Lee might get a takedown. I think on the feet, he's going to start landing his shots. He's going to rip the body of Santos. He might hurt Santos, but I think Santos will come back and recover. And I think when we get to that 6.5, 7.5 minute mark, that's where I think Santos is going to be able to push forward and continue to push Jung Yong Lee back. And it's going to make it more telegraphed if Jung Yong Lee does shoot those takedowns, and it's going to make it more tiring for him to just constantly be going off the back foot. Striking off the back foot is an extremely exhausting thing. If you've ever sparred before, if you've ever been in a real-life competition, when you're getting pushed back and you're fighting off the back foot, you can fight effectively off the back foot, being light on your feet, cutting angles, moving laterally, using the check hook to kind of draw your opponent in, and using a lot of fakes and feints and switch stances to get out of the way. But it's still going to be a lot more tiresome than if you're walking forward and pushing the opponent on the back foot. And I do think that he will eventually get to a guy like Jung Yong Lee. I think early, Jung Yong Lee can hurt him. I think he can take him down. I don't think he submits Santos, but I think he can hurt him with shots. And the one thing we know about a lot of these Chute box guys is that they love to get into wars. They love to get into exchanges. And it didn't work out for Felipe dos Santos the last time, even though it was a great fight against Lonair Kavanaugh. But in this fight, I think it could work against Jung Yong Lee because I don't think he's comfortable fighting off of that back foot. When it comes to a prediction, I'm going to take Daniel Santos. I'm not like 100% confident. I'm going to say maybe 60-40. I lean towards Daniel Willie Cat Santos. I like his style. I like his ability. Yes, he takes damage, but he comes back. He weathers the storm, and I think he can weather the storm against Jung Yong Lee. I think it could be a late second or third round TKO, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this fight goes to a decision, and Santos wins the second and third rounds by just getting Jung Yong Lee on that back foot, pushing him back and tiring him out. So give me Daniel Willie Cat Santos. I'll go 29-28 unanimous decision in the first fight of the evening, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division. You got a battle between Marc-Andre Barriault, the power bar, taking on Bruno Blindado Silva. I'm going to be honest, guys, this is kind of a tough fight to call because I think both of these guys are fragile. I think both of these guys can get finished with one shot. And I would think the one-shot finish would more come on the side of Bruno Silva knocking out Marc-Andre. But when it comes to Bruno Silva, I really think that Alex Pereira fight took everything out of him. I know he knocked out Brad Tavares, and Tavares beat GM3 and stuff like that. But I think Silva kind of just went out on his shield in that Pereira fight and took so much damage. And if you look at Pereira's career, you know, people aren't able to take shots like that against him. I would say the closest thing is Khalil Roundtree, and we don't know how much that brawl with Pereira is going to affect Roundtree until we see him come back and take on Jamal Hill. You know, he might not be the same guy after that, and I think Silva's in kind of a similar position. He's got very solid ground and pound. If Marc-Andre tries to take him down and winds up on his back, I think Bruno Silva could KO Barriault with some ground and pound. I think he could knock out MAB on the feet with one shot. But the last time out against, who did he fight? Ismail Nardiev? I think it was Nardiev, the Austrian Wonder Boy. We picked Nardiev via finish, and we also picked him to win that fight pretty decisively. And he beat the shit out of Bruno Silva. Silva just wasn't there. He wasn't throwing. He was kind of just standing there the whole time taking shots. You could tell he didn't want to be in there. And if you don't want to be in there, I think a fight against Marc-Andre Barriault is one of the worst things you could do for your career. Because Marc-Andre, you know, he can get KO'd. We saw him get knocked out brutally by Joe Pyfer. And I really think that KO to Pyfer played into the fact that Dustin Stoltzfus knocked him out. I mean, if you're getting one-shot KO'd clearly, one-shot knocked out cold, asleep by Dustin Stoltzfus, who doesn't knock anybody out, at least in his UFC career, that raises a lot of questions, and it makes you think, like, is Barriault, you know, going to be able to compete at a high level anymore? Because if he gets hit with a good shot, he might just go out. I mean, we've seen this time and time again in mixed martial arts. We've seen it in the past. We see it in the present, and we'll see it in the future, where a guy takes a brutal KO loss. They come back, and they're still good technically. They're still very solid. They still try to implement their game, but the minute you touch the button, they just go to sleep. And I kind of think that both of these guys are fragile in the chin region. I think that Marc-Andre can definitely resort to his wrestling and grappling and grinding Bruno Silva up against the cage, but you got to be careful because Silva might come up the middle with an uppercut, come around the side with a hook, land an overhand in the clinch, and just knock out Marc-Andre with one shot. I could see that, and I kind of think that's the only way that Silva wins this fight is by landing a big shot when Marc-Andre tries to close the distance and knocking him out. You know, how is Marc-Andre going to fight? Is he going to change his style, the style that made him so effective in the UFC? I don't think so, and I think he will be there to get KO'd, but I also think Bruno Silva just isn't the same guy that he used to be. He's very gun-shy. He doesn't throw enough. He's very low on the volume. And like I said, I think Marc-Andre could get KO'd with one shot, and I think Bruno Silva is a guy who could do that. But I kind of just see Marc-Andre, you know, in his hometown, in Canada. I think he's going to push forward. I think he's going to grind Bruno Silva up against the cage. I think we're going to see elbows over the top. I think we're going to see knees. I think we're going to see uppercuts. I think we're going to see a wrestling approach from Marc-Andre. And I think Marc-Andre is going to go on to submit Bruno Silva. I think he's going to beat him up in the clinch, push him against the fence, get his head on his chin, grind it in, over the top, rip into the body, get a takedown. I think in the second round, he'll take down Bruno Silva when Silva's kind of already checked out at that point, takes him down, beats him up with some ground and pound, and locks up an arm triangle and gets the submission. I think he submits Bruno Silva, and the submission for Marc-Andre right now is plus 1,400 for a submission. I think that he could get a KO, but I think it's more likely he beats him up on the feet and then uses his grappling, which we've seen Silva have a ton of issues with. I think he takes him down, and I think he submits him. So give me Marc-Andre Barriault. Give me the power bar. Give me MAB to get the job done here via second round arm triangle choke submission. I think Bruno's live for a KO in the first round. If you're going to bet Bruno Silva, I would just bet KO round one because I think that's what his win equity is. But in this fight, man, I just think even though Marc-Andre's been KO'd in his last couple fights, I've seen more from Marc-Andre getting knocked out than I've seen from Bruno Silva in his last few fights, who hasn't really done much of anything besides knock out Brad Tavares, which is impressive because he's hard to KO. But you know, yeah, I don't know. I'm more comfortable picking Marc-Andre. But again, a fight that you probably should stay away unless you're going to play a specific prop. But yeah, the pick, I'm going to go Marc-Andre. It's in Canada. I think he's going to be motivated. I think he's going to put the pace on Bruno Silva, tire him out, and then finish him off in the second round after he takes him to the ground. So give me MAB, Marc-Andre Barriault, to win second round arm triangle choke submission in this fight. All right, next fight up is in the light heavyweight division. You got a battle between Navajo Stirling taking on Ivan Erslan or Ivan Erslan. 14-4 for Erslan, 6-0 undefeated for Navajo Stirling. You know, I was not impressed with Sterling's performance against Tuco Tokos. I mean, he won pretty clearly, but he should have finished that fight, and I think a lot of people would tend to agree with me that he probably should have got the job done there. You know, Ivan Erslan, I played him going into the third round against Iwan Cutelaba as like a plus 1,000, plus 1,200. And arguably, I think he could have got that decision, but I understand why they gave it to Cutelaba. He caused more of the damage. But in the third round, Erslan took him down, got on top, beat him up, and, you know, clearly won round 3, but I guess they gave the first 2 rounds to Cutelaba. In this fight, I think a lot of people are going to take the easy route and say that Stirling is going to just use his jab, use that long reach, use that check hook when Erslan comes in, and just pick him apart from the outside. I honestly think Erslan can make this fight a lot more competitive than people are expecting. I think people are going to expect the easy round 1 knockout from Navajo Stirling, and I think it's possible, but I also kind of think that Erslan will get on the inside. He'll rip uppercuts, he'll rip hooks over the top, he'll rip those overhands, he'll move in close, and I think he can push Navajo Stirling on the back foot and make him uncomfortable. And I think with a striker who's as talented as Navajo Stirling, using the length, using the reach, you know, feinting the hip, typical city kickboxing, jab, check, hook, 1-2 down the middle, feints, teep kicks to the body. You know, I think that style, you have to push them back and you have to make them uncomfortable and you have to get them into a brawl. You have to make it messy. And I think if anybody can do that, it is a guy like Ivan Erslan. I think he can get on the inside. I think he can rip shots to the body. I think he could tie Navajo up in the clinch, land knees to the thigh, land knees to the body, and, you know, come over the top with elbows and uppercuts and things like that. I think Erslan can make this fight a lot more competitive than people are going to be expecting. But there's a difference between what you think can happen and what you think will happen. And I honestly think that, I've been going back and forth on this fight because I could see a clear path for Erslan if he can get out of that first 5 or 6 minutes. I think he can win the fight down the stretch. If he can get in the face of Navajo, if he can push Navajo on the back foot, but on Erslan's terms and not the terms of Navajo just drawing him in, I think he can make this competitive. I think he can hurt Navajo Stirling. I think he could, rip him up against the cage and make him tired and maybe win just based on sheer volume and pressure. But I honestly think, the more I thought about it, I am going to take Navajo Stirling. I do think he might win by knockout. I could see a decision similar to the Tokos fight, but if you're taking Tuco Tokos to a decision and a guy who's been finished in the UFC before, I think Erslan has a shot here. This is a stay away fight for me in terms of the betting perspective. I would stay away from it completely, but from an overall pick perspective, I am going to take Navajo Stirling. I think he's going to catch him with that check hook in the second round and put him down and probably put him out. But you have to think, he came in against Cutelaba short notice and still had a competitive fight. I would not be surprised if Erslan pulled this out. I would not be surprised if he slowed him down in the second and the third, if he started ripping those body shots, if he pushed Stirling up against the cage. It wouldn't shock me if he made it dirty and ended up squeaking out 2 rounds, winning 2-1 on the scorecards. But the pick, I'm going to take Navajo Stirling. I'm going to take Stirling by second round knockout. I think he catches Erslan coming in, hurts him, and gets him out of there. I think the UFC want a big win for Stirling, so that's going to be my pick. Navajo Stirling, second round KO. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Ivan Erslan won the last 2 rounds and got a decision. All right, next fight up is in the light heavyweight division. You got a battle between Modestas Bukauskas taking on Iwan the Hulk Cutelaba. This is a great matchup. This is really good matchmaking on the UFC's part. And I'm going to come right out and say it. I think Iwan Cutelaba beats Modestas Bukauskas. I picked Rafael Cerqueira against Modestas, and it didn't go well for me. He knocked him out in the first round, hurt him with 1 shot, and put a barrage on him up against the cage. And I think that performance in particular is going to make people very heavy on the side of Bukauskas. They're going to think, okay, well, we've seen Cutelaba get rocked. We've seen Cutelaba get put down. We've seen him get KO'd. We've seen Modestas get a submission, against Marcin Prachnio. He got hurt in that Prachnio fight, and he was also hurting Prachnio. Modestas likes to get in the pocket and likes to trade and likes to get into brawls. And he also can fight on the outside, but he has that off switch. And Cutelaba has an off switch as well. But I would honestly say at this point, I think it's harder to knock out Cutelaba than it is to knock out Bukauskas in the UFC at this point. I think Bukauskas can hang around for less time and trade without getting hurt. And I think Cutelaba could last longer in exchanges without getting hurt. I think the length and the reach of Modestas Bukauskas is important. It's only a 1-inch reach advantage on paper, but I think he uses his length and reach a lot better than Iwan Cutelaba. But I also think we have seen a more, I guess you could say, a better fight IQ version of a Cutelaba in his last few fights. Against Ibo Aslan, he was getting pieced up a little bit on the feet. Immediately went to the wrestling, dominated Aslan on the ground, and got that submission. He knows what he needs to do in order to win. Even against Ivan Erslan, hurt him on the feet a couple times, but eventually got those takedowns, started wrestling, using his grappling, using his strength. And I think Cutelaba is a smarter version of the fighter. If this was the Cutelaba of 2 or 3 years ago, I think I would take Bukauskas. But I think Bukauskas is not going to really be able to grapple with Cutelaba. I think if he goes for submissions, it probably would be a guillotine. And I think Cutelaba would be able to get out and float his hips and eventually end up on the top, where he could land a lot of ground and pound and control Bukauskas on the floor. I also think that he has that one-shot power where Bukauskas could be winning, outpointing him, outlanding him, using his length and reach, pumping the jab, throwing front kicks to the body, and then he eventually just gets clipped with one big shot and gets sat down by Cutelaba, who still has a lot of power, but he isn't as wild. He isn't as, I guess you could say fan-friendly now as he was before. He kind of picks his shots better. He moves better. He knows when to switch between the striking to the grappling to the striking. Knows when to use his wrestling and knows when to, put the output up on the feet, push the opponent against the cage, strike, rip, take him down, and, rinse and repeat the recipe to success. And with that being said, I'm going to take the Hulk. I'm going to take Ion Cutelaba. I think he's going to get a TKO here. I also think a submission is live for Cutelaba. I wouldn't be surprised if he started using his wrestling early, took down Modestas Bukauskas, tired him out, and got a sub in the second or third round, either a rear naked choke or an arm triangle from the top. I think he would more get a top side grappling submission than a submission off of his back. I don't think he has much to offer off of his back, but he is very good and very heavy on the top with ground and pound and looking to set up submissions. Yeah, I think Cutelaba finishes this fight. You know what? I'll go out on a limb and say he gets a TKO. I think the sub is live. You know, it was live in the last fight against Erslan, but we thought he was going to get put out, and he didn't. He got hurt, came back, did what he needed to do. I think Bukauskas is, like I said, a little bit overrated in this certain matchup, and a lot of people are expecting him to just style on Cutelaba, and that could happen. I mean, he's long, he's rangy, he uses his length and reach very well, and he has some pop on his shots, but I think Cutelaba is going to close that distance. I think if he does get hurt, I think he'll resort to the wrestling. I think he'll start to get takedowns, and I think he ends up on top, and he kind of beats up Modestas Bukauskas, and it could be a KO, it could be a sub. I already said I'm going to take KO. I'm going to switch. I'm going to go sub. I'm going to say he beats him up on the feet, tires him out, gets the takedown, uses that pressure, and then eventually locks up that arm triangle choke submission in the second round. Give me Ion the Hulk Cutelaba, round 2 arm triangle choke submission over Modestas Bukauskas. I just think Cutelaba is a smarter version of himself now, and I like fighters who can evolve, who can change their style, and know how to win fights and do what needs to be done, and I think that's Cutelaba. So give me Ion Cutelaba, round 2 arm triangle choke submission in this fight. All right, next fight up is in the women's flyweight division. You got a battle between Jessica Bate Estaca Andrade taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Jasmine Jasudavicius. Man, keep the train rolling. Keep on rolling down the hill. I'm going with JJ. Give me double J, not Jeff Jarrett. Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think she's going to beat the shit out of Andrade, okay? She's very hittable on the feet. So Andrade is always live for a KO. She's always live to rock Jasmine and grab a submission. You know, she almost got submitted in her fight against Mayra Bueno Silva. Got the jump in the guillotine, almost getting caught but fighting out of it. I think that's what makes the difference here, guys. Jasmine fights to win for the entire 15 minutes. She is looking to break you from the first minute of the first round to the 5th minute of the 3rd round. She is going to walk forward. She is going to take your best shots, and she is going to get in your face. She's going to rough you up in the clinch. She's going to take you down. You'll threaten submissions. She'll fight out of it. Has she lost in the UFC? Yes, she did lose to Tracy Cortez. I think if they run that fight back, I think Jasmine beats the shit out of Cortez. I do. I think Jasmine's a different fighter now. She's always kind of fought the same, but I still think her style in the women's division is one of the most dangerous styles because she's not going to get tired. She's going to keep pushing forward, and she can take a shot. You know, she got rocked bad against Fatima Klein. Almost got knocked out, still came back and won that fight. Pushing forward, getting takedowns, getting in the top position, threatening submissions, threatening ground and pound. She's always looking to set up that Darce choke. She's always looking to land ground and pound until you give up your neck so she can lock up a submission. And I honestly think that's what we're going to see here. I think Andrade might hurt her in the first round. But I also think Andrade is just doing this for money at this point. I don't think she has her heart in the game. I don't think she has her mind in the game. I don't think she's really in the game of MMA anymore. And, you know, this is the type of fighter where you beat Andrade. You're 1 fight away, 2 fights away from a title shot. They know what they're doing. It's in the hometown of Jasudavicius. She's in her hometown, and they're expecting her to have a standout performance. And I think she does it. I think that Andrade is the perfect fighter to get Jasmine another late finish on her record. I think she's going to maybe get hurt in the first round with those big clubbing hooks from Andrade. Big overhand, the big hooks, left hook, right overhand, left hook. And I think she might get hurt, but she's going to weather the storm. She's going to push Andrade against the cage. She's going to go to the over-under. She's going to go to the, the body lock. She's going to rip knees, rip elbows. She's going to start to use her wrestling. She's going to start to push her back. I think she gets a takedown in the second round. I think she beats her up with ground and pound. I think Andrade tries to stand up and gets caught in the Darce choke. And we see another Darce choke submission for Jasmine Jasudavicius. I do not agree with the fact that she should be like a 3-1 favorite. but I think that's more me not agreeing with it because I want to get a juicy sub number because I always take the sub for Jasmine in her fights. But, yeah, guys, I think Jasmine wins this fight, and I think she finishes Andrade. I think she's ready for a title shot, and I think Andrade has one foot out the door. And I think even if Andrade was still in her prime, I think the style of Jasudavicius is just a nightmare for Andrade. Good cardio, good pressure, good volume, heavy wrestling, good ground and pound, always hunting submissions. I mean, what more could you ask for besides a little bit better defense, which could leave her open for the power of Andrade? But I don't really think that's going to matter here. I think Jasmine's going to walk her down. I think she's going to get hit with some big shots, but still be in there. She's going to push Andrade against the fence. She's going to land knees to the body. She's going to land elbows. She's going to land uppercuts. She's going to tire her out in round 1. She's going to take her down in round 2. She's going to beat her up with ground and pound. Andrade is going to turn over to try to get up to her feet. Jasmine's going to lock in a Darce choke and get the second round Darce choke submission. Give me Jasmine Jasudavicius, round 2 Darce choke submission over Jessica Andrade. And keep on rolling down the hill. All right, next fight up in the welterweight division, you have a battle between proper Mike Malott taking on Charles Radtke. You know, I'm going to keep this one pretty short, but I really like Charles Radtke here, man. I don't believe in Mike Malott. I don't. He broke against Neil Magny in a fight that, let's be honest, he was dominating those first 2 rounds. Gassed out, quit, Magny put the pressure on him, and that was it. In his last fight against Trevin Giles, you know, Giles is a hard guy to beat. He has a weird style, very traditional boxing-esque, decent kicks, really good head movement, decent counters, but he leaves himself open. And, you know, a gust of wind, and he does the chicken dance. And Mike Malott wasn't really able to do much of anything in terms of hurting him, but he did win that fight by decision. You know, outstruck Giles, I guess you could say. But that fight was pretty close when you think about it, and honestly, I feel like they could have given that fight to Trevin Giles. And when I look at this fight on paper, I don't expect Malott to take down and submit Charles Radtke. I don't expect him to be able to continuously take down Radtke. I don't think he hits as hard as Radtke on the feet. I don't think he's as sharp as Radtke on the feet. And I don't think he's as technical as Radtke. I think Radtke can touch the chin of Mike Malott in the first round, hurt him, and put him out. I really do. I think he has the power and the technical skills in the striking to put down Mike Malott early in this fight. Could be round 1. You know, I know he got the round 1 KO against Matthew Semmelsberger. Easy win, easy fight. He comes in against Gilbert Urbina, hurts him multiple times, knocks him out. He got knocked out by Carlos Prates, but Prates is one of the best guys in the division, you know. Say what you want about his fight against Ian Gary. He still tried to finish in the 5th round. Could have gotten that finish, too, if he just pushed a little bit harder, but he was also tired. You know, a 25-minute fight. You're going to be tired in that 5th round. I think Radtke's jab, his left hook, it's so short, it's so clean. The 1-2 down the middle, the cross into the left hook. I think eventually he's just going to get on the inside against Malott, and I think he's going to hurt him, rock him, and put him down. You know, if you're getting touched up against Giles, you know, if you're getting TKO'd by Neil Magny, yes, Magny's a veteran. Giles also a veteran, so you have to take that into consideration, you know, veteran status. But I think the power and the technical skill of Charles Radtke, and I think also what's important is the confidence he comes into every fight with. You know, call it trash talking, call it what you want. I mean, this guy's coming in there to take your head off for as long as the fight lasts. I think he probably could rock him and get a submission too. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's expecting a KO. He hurts him a bunch of times and then just submits him. Everybody's going to say it's in the hometown. And I think for some fighters, in fights and matchups, it matters. Like, it's in the hometown. They did not give Malott an easy fight in his hometown against Radtke. This is one of the tougher fights, I think, for the style of Mike Malott. You know, I really do. And I think Radtke is going to come in here. I think he's going to get in his face early. I think we're going to see Malott try to use a lot of low kicks, jabs, circling, head kicks, you know, keeping Radtke away from him, trying to time his steps in with takedowns. But I think Radtke's going to have good takedown defense. I know he trains wrestling with some very high-level wrestlers. I think he's going to have some good takedown defense. I think he possibly could threaten with submissions of his own. And I think for the most part, this is going to stay on the feet. And on the feet between Malott and Radtke, I just think the technical skill and the power is just way too much on the side of Radtke for Mike Malott. So I'm going to take Charles Radtke by round 1 knockout. I think he puts him down early, hurts him. Malott tries to recover, shoots a takedown, pushes Radtke against the fence, but Radtke gets out, hurts him again, and then jumps on him and gets a finish. Give me a round 1 knockout for Charles Radtke over proper Mike Malott and hand him a proper ass whooping, in my opinion. I think Radtke has the skills to put Malott out in this fight, and I think that's what he's going to do. So give me a Charles Radtke round 1 knockout over Mike Malott. I just think he's too sharp and too powerful for a guy who gets his hit as much, who gets hit as much as a guy like Mike Malott, and I don't think it's going to be easy to take him down. So the pick is the underdog in Charles Radtke to win round 1 knockout over proper Mike Malott. All right, next fight up is in the women's flyweight division. The first fight up on the pay-per-view. Very solid fight between the former champion in Alexa Grasso taking on the rising contender in Natalia Silva. Guys, realistically, you know, I'm a huge Alexa Grasso fan. You can tell I'm also a Natalia Silva fan. I've picked them in all their fights. I don't pick against them. And I've been wrong once on the Grasso side. And so far, I haven't been wrong on the Natalia Silva side. But what I will say is when I saw her take on Viviane Araújo, you know, she hurt her bad early. But for the most part, she was getting controlled against the fence with the strength of Viviane Araújo. The strength in the clinch, it seemed like she had a strength disadvantage. And I think Grasso is one of the best grapplers in the women's flyweight division. You know, she is always threatening with submissions. Like, did she get taken down and held down by Valentina? Yes. But she threatened with a guillotine. She almost threatened with a mounted guillotine. She threatened with a triangle. She threatened with an armbar and almost had it. I mean, she was throwing up subs left and right. Like I said, almost got a guillotine, almost got an armbar. And she was trying to threaten with those subs for the majority of the fight. Grasso's a good boxer. She's very compact in her stance. She throws a good 1-2, a solid left hook, a good right hand. I think on the feet, though, the biggest disadvantage she's going to have is just the way that Natalia Silva uses her length and her reach. I think even though on paper, Grasso has the longer reach and she has, you know, an advantage in that area, the fight's not going to play out like that. Because on the feet, the jabs, the movement, the in and out movement, the lateral movement, the side to side, pop, side to side, pop, cross, lead head kick, jab, lead head kick, 1-2, rear body kick. I think it's going to be kind of a point fighting, you know, Wonder Boy Thompson, Michael Venom Page. That's what we're going to see from Natalia Silva on the feet. Now, you could always time them stepping in with a good counter, but it's going to be harder for Grasso to crash the distance and close the pocket without really using the boxing to get to her wrestling, to get to the takedowns, to get to the jiu-jitsu. I think there is a huge grappling advantage on the side of Alexa Grasso. I think she can close the distance. She can get on the inside. She can get to the body lock. She can threaten the neck if Silva tries to shoot a takedown, you know, but she can also get held on her back. I think the grappling advantage is heavily on the side of Grasso. Like I said, I think the submission upside is heavy on the side of Alexa Grasso. But I also think everybody's thinking like KO on the side of Natalia Silva. I don't think Natalia Silva is going to knock out Alexa Grasso. I think it'll be competitive on the feet, but I think the distance control, the range, and the kicking game of Natalia Silva with the lead head kicks, the body kicks, the front kicks, the 1-2, you know, moving side to side, 1-2, rear head kick, lead head kick, moving around. I think she's going to just kind of outpoint and pick apart Grasso and make it very hard for her to get on the inside. But if anybody can do it, I think it's Grasso, and a lot of these prospects lately have been losing. You know, they're looking real good, undefeated, etc. Even though I know Natalia Silva isn't undefeated, but, you know, she has lost in her MMA career. And I think that's what's the difference here is everybody's thinking, oh, prospect. You know, she is a prospect in the UFC. But Natalia Silva has lost before. She's tasted defeat. Not in the UFC. I think if somebody could beat Natalia Silva, it would be a girl with the style of Alexa Grasso. You know, out of her 5 losses, she's got 1 KO loss and 2 submission losses. The last time Natalia Silva got submitted was back in... It doesn't even tell me. I don't even think it's on here. Yeah, it doesn't even tell me. But she's on a huge win streak. She did defeat Jasudavicius. When was that? I swear I just saw her name on here. Yeah, so she won a unanimous decision over Jasudavicius back in June of 2022. Jasmine Jasudavicius, she lost to Natalia Silva, and she also lost to Tracy Cortez. Before that, she lost a split decision to Elise Reed, which doesn't look great, but she's on a 4-fight win streak. And, I think that win for Natalia Silva looks good based off recent performances. I think she's going to outpoint Alexa Grasso. I will tell you, I'm probably going to sprinkle Grasso submission round 2, Grasso submission round 3. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I think she has a huge advantage on the ground, and if they get into a scramble, I think Grasso can win. But on the feet, I think it's going to be a battle of range and distance, and I think the kicking game, the footwork, and the movement is just going to be too much for Grasso. So I think Natalia Silva wins 29-28 unanimous decision, but she could get put in some trouble if she gets into a scramble and winds up on the ground, or even gets into the clinch and Grasso shucks her forward and takes her back and looks for a sub. So I think it's Grasso by submission if you're on the Alexa Grasso side. It pains me to pick against my girl, my number one, Alexa Grasso, but I got to do it here. Give me Natalia Silva. I'm going to say Natalia Silva 29-28 unanimous decision. She outpoints Alexa Grasso and strikes from the outside. All right, next fight up, you got a battle in the bantamweight division between the returning King of Rio, Jose Aldo Jr., taking on the brother of one of the best coaches in mixed martial arts in Fiorot Zahabi, the lead coach of TriStar Gym in Ayman Zahabi. Zahabi versus Aldo. Guys, I think this fight is way closer than the odds are going to tell you, baby. I think it is going to be a boring 15-minute kickboxing match. And I'm sure Aldo will have his explosions. That left hook to the body, the overhand right. Aldo's going to like to get into the pocket, and trade. But I think when you have a guy in Ayman Zahabi who has Firas in his corner, you're going to know one thing. They're going to come in with a good game plan. I will always take a fighter who comes in with a good game plan over a fighter who is known for all these finishes, who's, people are playing off of his past to predict the present. And I don't like that, okay? I love Aldo. I love Aldo as much as the next guy. I picked him as an underdog against Jonathan Martinez. I picked against him with Mario Bautista, and I expected him to win the fight the exact way that he won the fight. By pressuring Aldo, by pushing him against the cage, by controlling him in the clinch, and taking a page out of Merab Dvalishvili's book. Now, I'm sure Aldo's going to expect Zahabi to come forward and, beat him up in the clinch, push him against the cage, and he's probably going to have very good cage wrestling defense, shucking to one side and sneaking back out the other way and getting back to the center, throwing a jab cross, left hook, right low kick, throwing a cross, lead liver shot, right low kick, typical Dutch style combinations. The 1-2 of Aldo's very clean. I think Aldo to be the more technical and the more powerful striker, but I just think that Zahabi is going to know what to do. Check hook to get out, jab, 1-2, tie up, push against the cage, break off with strikes, enter back in on the clinch, break off with strikes, jab, check hook, move out, cross lead head kick. Aldo pressures forward, duck under, go to the clinch, break off, 1-2. He's going to have to force Aldo to continually reset in order to get him off of his striking rhythm. You don't want Aldo to develop a rhythm, and I think if anybody can develop a game plan in order to break that typical rhythm, it is a guy like Ayman Zahabi. He's won a lot of fights as a big underdog. I mean, he beat, who was the guy? He was like plus 700. Going into the third round. Let me see. Javid Bashrat. So he won that unanimous decision. Going into the third round, like I said, he was a huge underdog. I think it was plus 600, plus 700. I called all my buddies. I said, put some money on Zahabi. This fight's a lot closer than the odds are telling you. And I think this, again, is going to be a close fight. You have to factor in where they're fighting. They're fighting in Montreal. They're fighting in the hometown of Zahabi. Firas Zahabi being his brother. There's going to always be some hometown cooking when it comes to the judging. You just have to pick which fight's going to play more of a factor in than others. I think this fight's going to be a close kickboxing match. I think Aldo will probably get pushed against the cage, probably get controlled against the fence a few times. I think Zahabi's going to come back with some good counters. I think Aldo probably will have the more powerful strikes, but I also think Zahabi is going to make it a lot closer. This fight is going to be a coin flip. It might end by split decision. It wouldn't surprise me. I think it's going to be a close fight, not a ton of action, but I think Zahabi's going to be competitive. He's going to use that check hook. He's going to use that jab. He's going to use those 1-2s. He's going to push Aldo against the fence. Aldo's going to come back with some good combos. Liver shot, low kick, 1-2, cross, liver shot, low kick, jab, 1-2 down the middle. And I think it's going to be a close competitive fight where at the end, people are going to disagree with the decision one way or another. But my pick, I'm going to go with the hometown guy because I think there is going to be a factor where that hometown cooking is going to play into it, and it's going to be a close fight. Give me Amin Zahabi via split decision, 29-28 split decision over Jose Aldo. I think Zahabi wins, ekes out a decision, and the fans probably aren't going to be happy about it. But give me Amin Zahabi, 29-28 split decision. I think this fight's going to be close. It might be boring, but I think Zahabi does just enough to squeak it out. All right, now we're in the co-main event of the evening for the Women's Flyweight Championship of the World. You have Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko defending her title against another standout kickboxer in the division in Manon Fiorot. So yeah, I'm going to be honest, guys. I don't understand Valentina being the underdog. I don't. I think, yes, Valentina's getting older, but Manon's like 36. Is it now or never for Manon Fiorot? Yes. But do I think she's better than Valentina in any aspect of MMA? No, I don't. And I could sit here and give you a long breakdown and explain why I think this and why I think that. Listen, I think Fiorot is a good striker. She has a good check hook. Really solid straight left hand. Fighting another southpaw in Valentina, I think that makes it harder for both women because they, aren't used to fighting southpaws. Southpaws are never used to fighting southpaws. It's usually southpaw versus orthodox or orthodox versus orthodox. And all the tactics you use, getting the outside foot, check hooking the outside foot, that all goes out the window. So you have to switch up your game plan. It's going to be more rear hand dominance when you're facing southpaw versus southpaw. You're going to lead with that rear hand and then follow up with the left hook. The right hook. You're going to jab a lot more than you are going to be check hooking. It's going to be more jabs, more 1-2s, more crosses, leading with the cross, following with the back body kick, following with the back head kick. It's going to be like an orthodox versus orthodox fighter where, the jab, the straights, and the body kicks are going to be more important. I think Fiorot is very strong, and I think she will make the striking competitive with Valentina. But the problem is I don't think that Fiorot is going to possess anything that Valentina hasn't fought before. She's fought brawlers, she's fought technicians, she's fought grapplers. I think Fiorot might have a strength advantage compared to the people that Valentina usually fight, but I don't see a world where Fiorot controls Valentina in the clinch. I think she lands some good shots. I think they go back and forth. I think the kickboxing between both of these women is going to be competitive, and if I told you no, that it wasn't going to be competitive and it was going to be a blowout on either side, I would be lying to you because I think the kickboxing and the striking in this matchup it's going to be competitive. Fiorot's going to have her shots. She's going to land that straight left. She's going to land that 1-2. I think Valentina's going to use her leg kicks, use her body kicks very well, use her check hook, use that jab. The one thing I don't like is the fact that when Fiorot throws punches, she leaves her head right there on the center line. There's no sense of urgency to get out of the way, and there's no real head movement from Fiorot. I haven't seen much of any head movement in recent performances. She throws a good 1-2, she throws a good jab, and most of the time she's probably not using her head movement because she knows how to manage the distance. She knows how to dictate the range. But against another standout striker, against another standout kickboxer like a Valentina, who has never really been outstruck in the UFC, you have to have good head movement because if you just stand there and get struck, you're going to get counter-struck as well. And I think also when it's close and there's a lack of head movement on the one side, I think Valentina's grappling is a lot better than Fiorot as well. Yes, Fiorot has good takedown defense. She has a good whizzer. She has a good underhook on the other side. Pushing the opponent up against the fence, backing up, stuffing the takedown, using the whizzer, hard whizzer, underhook on the other side, circle off, striking off the break. I think it's going to be a competitive fight, but I think Valentina will also use her takedowns. I think she's going to use her wrestling, and I think maybe she doesn't get takedowns early, but the longer the fight goes, I think she will take down Fiorot. I think she will start to tire her out. I think she will start to slow her down. When she gets those takedowns, when she starts to make those takedowns easier and easier, land some ground and pound, stay on the top, defending submissions, I think when they get up to the feet, the striking is going to be more competitive because Fiorot is not going to be able to, bounce in and out, move laterally, left and right, and be as explosive and as, effective with her footwork defensively as she is earlier on in the fight. And that's why I said I don't really like the defense of Fiorot, because she has good footwork, good range management, but she doesn't move her head. When you slow down and your footwork isn't there, when that bounce and that step isn't there as much as it was earlier, you not moving your head is now going to lead you to get caught. It's going to lead you to openings. It's going to leave you open to counters, which is going to make it easier for the opponent to hit you, which is going to make you more defensive on the feet and make you forget about the takedown, which is going to open up the pathway for the grappling and takedowns of Valentina as well. I think Valentina wins this fight. I think she wins it pretty clearly. I could see a ground and pound finish. I could see a late submission, but I'm going to say that Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko remains the champion. Give me Ann Still, the UFC Women's Flyweight Champion, Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko, 48-47 unanimous decision, 3 rounds to 2. I could see it being 4 rounds to 1, but I think she does enough. She mixes in the wrestling. She is better defensively, has better counters, and leaves herself less open than Manon Fiorot. Give me Valentina to win. Shevchenko, 48-47 unanimous decision. Maybe a late ground and pounder submission finish. It would not shock me one bit. All right, and now we're at the main event of the evening for the welterweight championship of the world. You have the reigning, defending champion in Belal Muhammad trying to make his first successful title defense as the champion, taking on the man who lost 2 fights in a row in his first professional fights and then went on a 17-fight unbeaten streak in the Aussie, Jack Della Maddalena. First title shot, 17-2 versus 24-3. Guys, this is a good fight. Whether you want to believe it or not, I think this is going to be a really solid main event. A lot of people are going to take the favorite in Belal, and I get it. He's an underdog in every fight. He's been winning. Dominates Leon Edwards. But let's look at the word dominate. He took him down. He outstruck him. But Leon was able to take the back of Belal Muhammad. Leon threatened with a choke. Leon was able to get his own takedown against Belal and was also able to reverse positions in the 5th round and bloody Belal Muhammad with elbows and hammer fists, almost finishing the fight. But Belal was able to survive and get to the scorecards and win a pretty clear-cut 4 rounds to 1, 49-46. Belal did pretty much dominate. I mean, he switched from the single to the high crotch and dumped Leon on his head. He landed some ground and pound. He pushed him back and pressured him with strikes. But go back and look at Leon Edwards' last fight. He goes in, he takes on Sean Brady. He gets outstruck, barely lands any strikes, gets taken down, held down, beat up on the ground, almost TKO'd, and then submitted in the 4th round by Sean Brady. I expected it. I called it. I called 4th round sub. And I didn't expect Belal to beat Leon, but we kind of had the blueprint as to how you beat Leon. You get in his face, you pressure, you push him back, you don't allow him to dictate the range, and you don't allow him to get off, and he'll break mentally and slow down even more than he slowed down in the beginning. He's going to come out hard in the 5th because, he's down, he knows he has to come out, but you have to give him a little bit of a pep talk. If there's one fighter in the UFC's welterweight division you don't need to give a pep talk to, whether they're up 3 rounds to 0 or down 0 rounds to 4, it's Jack Della Maddalena. Okay? This guy will come at you from the first minute of the fight to the last minute of the fight. And that is a recipe for disaster for a fighter like Belal Muhammad. He could take him down. Sure, I'm sure he'll get 1 or 2 takedowns. Easy. But he's not going to submit Jack Della. I fully believe he doesn't submit him. I don't think he's capable of winning by a ground and pound TKO. And I don't think he's going to be able to hold down Jack Della for 5 rounds. I don't think he's going to be able to hold Jack down for 3 rounds. But whenever he's not holding him down, I do think that the forward pressure and the output of Belal, it's going to get Jack on the back foot, and he might land a few shots. But he's going to be open for those counters right over the top. The sidestep, overhand right. Sidestep, overhand right, rip hook to the body. How do you tire out a grappler or a wrestler? Take a look at the last fight we just watched. Reinier de Ridder and Bo Nickel. How did he win? Obviously, it's a different scenario. You know, Belal has a lot more high-level experience. But what I took from that fight is you work the body, okay? And who is better at working the body in the welterweight division than a guy like JDM? Jab, cross, lead hook to the body. Jab, lead hook to the body, right hand. Lead hook to the body, right cross, left hook, right hand up top. Jab, rear uppercut, lead hook to the body. Knees to the body, like he fractured the rib of Gilbert Burns with. I don't know if he fractured his rib, but he definitely popped his rib with that knee to the body as he level changed. I think Belal might have some early success, but Jack Della will stay in the fight no matter how many rounds he's down. He's not going to be mentally defeated. And I think the Leon fight was a hard fight for Belal, but it was also an easier fight for Belal because he knew once he had him on that back foot, once he had him pressured, once he had him beat, Leon was done. And you saw another example of that in the first fight with Kamaru Usman, but he was able to pull out the head kick. And you saw another example of that in the most recent fight against Sean Brady, where Brady dominated him. Now, I believe Belal's best win in the UFC to be the win over Sean Brady. I think that was great. That was a great win. He TKO'd him. But I don't see him staying safe for 25 minutes. And in this fight, I think it's going to be control and takedowns versus damage. And I think most of the damage in this fight, no matter if Belal holds him down for 3.5 minutes of the rounds, most of the damage is going to come from Della Maddalena. The body shots. I think he can hurt him up top. I think he can cut Belal. I think he can land some big elbows. He's going to rip that left hook to the body, rip those uppercuts, go back down to the body, land knees. And I think Jack's just going to be coming forward every single round. Round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5. Whether he's getting taken down and controlled, whether he's getting dominated by just being held down, I don't see Jack getting subbed. And I don't see Belal getting a TKO because I don't think Jack's going to surrender position and not work his way back up to the feet. A lot of people are going to point to the Basil Hafez fight. Hafez came in on short notice. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, short notice, yes. Jack Della made that fight more competitive, yes. But Jack Della also beat the living shit out of Basil Hafez. To the body, to the head, rocked him back down to the body. And he stood and traded with a guy who has a lot of power in his hands. He stood and traded in the pocket in a fight where he didn't have to trade because he was looking for the finish. Against Gilbert Burns, he's taken down, he's controlled. He got taken down, he got controlled, but he always was trying to work back up. He found a way to kick off the cage and get back up to his feet. Boom, immediately caught him with a knee, dropped him, and finished him. And he went hard for that finish in the third round. Okay, this is what it comes down to. I'm going new welterweight champion, Jack Della Maddalena, and I think he wins by knockout. I think it's in the late portions of the fight, 3, 4, and 5. I think maybe for the first 2 rounds it'll be competitive. Belal probably gets a takedown. Maybe he controls him for a round and a half. But every time they're back on the feet, Jack Della's going to be pushing. He's going to be stuffing those takedowns. He's going to be working off the cage, digging the underhook, circling back out. When he breaks off the fence, bop, 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 bop. Bop, 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 bop. He's going to be throwing punches in combinations and heavy power. Jab, left hook to the body, right hand. Jab, uppercut, left hook to the body. Cross, left hook to the body. Left hook to the body, right hook to the body. Switch back the other way. Left hook, right uppercut. Left hook up top. I think Jack Della is going to butcher Belal Muhammad and finish him late. So that's my pick. Give me Jack Della Maddalena to win via a late third round TKO over Belal Muhammad to become the new UFC welterweight champion. All right, that's it for my UFC 315 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave me your favorite predictions, leave me your favorite underdogs, leave me your favorite bets, and give me any questions or concerns you may have in the comment section below. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Let's make some money at UFC 315.